Hey sports card fans, it's John, Wade Boggs fan. Hope you're all doing well. The 1933 US Caramel set is a limited vintage release featuring an impressive checklist. Led by Babe Ruth, collectors have their fill of Hall of Fame talent, as well as several top golfers and boxers of the time. The set was produced by the US Caramel Company based in Boston, Massachusetts. As one of the last sets issued with caramel products before the onslaught of gum cards, the US Caramel set has long been considered to have come out in 1932 and has been identified by that year by PSA and SGC. However, it has been determined that it is actually a 1933 issue. US Caramel released this set of 32 cards, which includes 27 baseball players, as part of a contest where the owner could send in a complete set for a prize. In order to limit the prizes given out, one card was severely limited in its print run, which created one of the scarcest cards in the hobby. Although seen as a bridge between caramel-issued cards and gum cards of the 1930s, US Caramel cards are actually closer in size and format to the gum cards at 2.5 inches by 3 inches. Jefferson Burdick thought so as well, since he assigned it the catalog number R328, thereby placing it with Gowdy's, Playball, and other gum companies' sets. 1933 US Caramel card fronts feature a black and white photo of a player in front of a red background. The player's name and nickname, in parentheses, appear in white at the top. Backs have a card number, the player's name, position, and team, followed by a biographical write-up. At the bottom, the mail-in offer is stipulated. Collectors who completed the 1933 US Caramel set could send in the set and $1 for a free baseball. And 3 complete sets plus $3 yielded a free fielder's glove. Unlike other redemption programs, the company agreed to return the cards to the sender, although they would have likely been marked or hole punched so that they could not be redeemed again. Since US Caramel cards weren't exactly plentiful to begin with, the missing card that was limited was unknown for a long time. It is card number 16 and had been considered to be not issued. In fact, it wasn't until the 1990s that card number 16 was discovered to be Hall of Famer Charles Lindstrom. It is believed that fewer than 5 copies exist. PSA has only graded 1 copy. The last known sale of that card was sold at auction in 2001 for just under $80,000. The 5 non-baseball subjects in 1933 US Caramel include 3 boxers and 2 golfers. All are well known, especially golfer Bobby Jones, so individual collectors can make the decision whether to add them to their base sets. Almost all of the baseball players are Hall of Famers, making few true commons. However, the cards are scarce enough that even the commons get snatched up pretty quickly on the open market. In this video, I'm going to show the top 10 most valuable cards from the 1933 US Caramel set based on their PSA 3 values. I'll also give the values of those cards in higher grades, as well as the population count of those grades. Now, as a side note, because some cards have very low population counts, the values in some grades might not reflect current prices, since it may be a year or 2 or even more since a copy in that grade has been sold. In those cases, the price shown for the card is from the most recent sale in VCP's database. Now, before I get to the top 10, here are the cards that just missed the top 10. At number 15, the Charles Ruffing card. At number 14, the Earl Combs card. At number 13, the Al Simmons card. At number 12, the Paul Wainer card. And at number 11, the Joe Cronin card. So which cards made the top 10 list? Let's go find out. Coming in at number 10, we have the Eddie Collins card. In a PSA 3, there have been 11 graded copies with a current VCP average price of $416. There have been 6 graded at PSA 4 with the last sale at $450. There have been 2 graded a PSA 5, although there have been no reported sales of either of those 2 copies. There have been 7 graded at PSA 6. The last one sold for $622. There have been 2 graded at PSA 7. The last one sold for $1,136. There have been 12 graded a PSA 8. The last PSA 8 sale took place in February of 2022 through Heritage and sold for $4,080. And there has been 1 graded a PSA 9, although there have been no reported PSA 9 sales in VCP's database. At number 9, we have the Chuck Klein card. In a PSA 3, there have been 3 graded copies with a current VCP average price of $481. There have been 8 graded at PSA 4. The last one sold for $229. There have been 12 graded a PSA 5. The last one sold for $537. There have been 8 graded at PSA 6. The last one sold for $770. There have been 4 graded a PSA 7. The last one sold for $1,137. There have been 8 graded a PSA 8. The last PSA 8 sale took place in July of 2021 through Memory Lane and sold for $3,212. And like most cards on this top 10 list, there have not been a PSA 9 or 10 graded copy of the Chuck Klein card. At number 8, we have the Tony Lazor card. In a PSA 3, there have been 7 graded copies with a current VCP average price of $495. There have been 9 graded at PSA 4. The last one sold for $512. There have been 11 graded at PSA 5. The last one sold for $780. There have been 8 graded at PSA 6. The last one sold for $694. There have been 6 graded at PSA 7. The last one sold for $1,171. There have been 11 graded a PSA 8. The last PSA 8 sale took place in August of 2021 through REA and sold for $3,240. At number 7, we have the Mickey Cochran card. In a PSA 3, there have been 6 graded copies with a current VCP average price of $510. There have been 16 graded at PSA 4. The last one sold for $534. There have been 12 graded at PSA 5. The last one sold for $800. There have been 8 graded a PSA 6. The last one sold for $780. There have been 9 graded at PSA 7. The last one sold for $818. And there have been 9 graded a PSA 8. The last PSA 8 sale took place in August of 2021 through REA and sold for $3,600. At number 6, we have the Lefty Gomez card. In a PSA 3, there have been 5 graded copies with a current VCP average price of $526. There have been 13 graded at PSA 4. The last one sold for $770. There have been 7 graded at PSA 5. The last one sold for $986. There have been 4 graded at PSA 6. The last one sold for $1,375. There have been 6 graded a PSA 7. The last one sold for $2,662. And there have been 5 graded a PSA 8. The last PSA 8 sale took place in April of 2019 through Heritage and sold for $9,000. At number 5, we have the Lefty Grove card. In a PSA 3, there have been 8 graded copies with a current VCP average price of $861. There have been 10 graded at PSA 4. The last one sold for $1,222. There have been 5 graded at PSA 5. The last one sold for $1,559. There have been 12 graded a PSA 6. The last one sold for $3,960. There have been 9 graded a PSA 7. The last one sold for $1,920. And there have been 7 graded a PSA 8. The last PSA 8 sale took place in January of 2024 through Memory Lane and sold for $33,193, placing the Lefty Grove at the number 4 spot in terms of PSA 8 graded copies on this top 10 list. At number 4, we have the Lulu Garri card. In a PSA 3, there have been 11 graded copies with a current VCP average price of $3,205. There have been 17 graded a PSA 4. The last one sold for $12,535. There have been 8 graded a PSA 5. The last one sold for $21,600. There have been 15 graded a PSA 6. The last one sold for $21,201. There have been 8 graded a PSA 7. The last one sold for $18,600. And there have been 8 graded a PSA 8. The last PSA 8 sale took place in April of 2019 through Heritage and sold for $38,400, placing Lulu Garri at number 3 on this top 10 list in terms of PSA 8 graded copies. At number 3, we have the Rogers Hornsby card. In a PSA 3, there have been 9 graded copies with a current VCP average price of $3,480. There have been 11 graded a PSA 4. The last one sold for $1,650. There have been 18 graded a PSA 5. The last one sold for $3,341. There have been 6 graded a PSA 6. The last one sold for $5,225. There have been 6 graded a PSA 7. The last one sold for $17,732. And there have been 4 graded a PSA 8. The last PSA 8 sale took place in January of 2024 through Memory Lane and sold for $43,930, placing the Rogers Hornsby at the number 2 spot in terms of PSA 8 graded copies on this list. At number 2, we have the Ty Cobb card. In a PSA 3, there have been 12 graded copies with a current VCP average price of $4,950. There have been 15 graded a PSA 4. The last one sold for $2,875. There have been 9 graded a PSA 5. The last one sold for $7,795. There have been 5 graded a PSA 6. The last one sold for $3,686. There have only been 3 graded a PSA 7. The last one sold for $15,101. There have been 12 graded a PSA 8. The last PSA 8 sale took place in May of 2023 through Memory Lane and sold for $29,012, placing the Ty Cobb at the number 5 spot in terms of PSA 8 graded copies on this top 10 list. Now, there have been 3 graded a PSA 9. The only PSA 9 sale in VCP's database took place in April of 2019 through Heritage and sold for $72,000. And at number 1 is the Babe Ruth card. In a PSA 3, there have been 7 graded copies with a current VCP average price of $15,035. There have been 8 graded a PSA 4. The last one sold for $17,850. There have been 6 graded a PSA 5. The last one sold for $36,006. There have been 11 graded a PSA 6. The last one sold for $9,750. There have been 13 graded a PSA 7. The last one sold for $72,000. There have been 8 graded a PSA 8. The last PSA 8 sale took place in September of 2023 through Memory Lane and sold for $157,295, placing the Babe Ruth at the number 1 spot as well in terms of PSA 8 graded copies on this list. Now, there have been 9 graded A PSA 9. However, the only PSA 9 sale in VCP's database took place in April of 2019 through Heritage and sold for $432,000. Well, there you go, the top 10 most valuable cards from the 1933 US Caramel set. As always, would love to know in the comments what you think about the set and the cards that made the top 10 list. And stay tuned for next week's episode, in which I take a look at the top 10 most valuable cards from the 1941 Gaudi set. And if you've missed either of the last 2 videos in this series, you can check them out right here. With that, that's all I have for you. So until next time, thanks for watching.